These are ballistic missiles raining down on Israel. They're just a portion of the roughly 180 that Iran launched on October 1st, 2024. Israel intercepted most, but not all of them. Missiles slammed into 2 air bases and near the headquarters of its intelligence agency. Israel promised to strike back.
איראן עשתה ערב טעות גדולה, והיא תשלם על כך.
And 3 weeks later, it did.
Israel is striking back on Iran this evening.
The Israel Defense Forces said it carried out precise strikes on military targets in Iran.
It's now a direct war, Iran against Israel.
For decades, Israel and Iran have inched closer and closer to all-out war. And now, they're on the brink of it.
I can tell you with no exaggeration, this morning is the closest moment they've been to war in their history.
So why do Israel and Iran hate each other? How did they get so close to this war? And can they still avoid it? Israel and Iran actually started out as friends. In the 1970s, Israel was at war with all these Arab states who detested how it had taken over Palestinian lands. So it began forming friendships with non-Arab states on the edges of the region.
The new Iran, which Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi helped create, was a modern wonder of the world. And all because of oil.
Iran was a huge and oil-rich country ruled by a monarch, the Shah, who believed a relationship with Israel could be beneficial to them both. He also opposed Arab states and began quietly selling Israel oil and collaborating with its military as a way to counter them. Crucially, the Shah and Israel were both backed by the US. But their friendship would abruptly end in 1979.
Chaotic celebrations erupted in Tehran when the news broke the Shah had gone. It was like Liberation Day.
The Islamist regime that took over Iran passionately condemned Israel's control of Palestinian territory and joined the list of countries threatening to destroy it. But over the following decades, most Arab states made peace or backed down from the conflict. By 2023, Iran was largely on its own.
Iran is the only state in the world that has fought Israel for the last few decades. It's an absolutely incredible fact.
Arash Azizi is a writer and historian.
They believe Arab states, including Palestinian leaders, are sort of losers who have not been able to fight Israel. So Iran sees itself as inheritor of this mantle of fighting Israel.
But Iran and Israel avoided fighting a direct war, largely by convincing the other it would lose. Covering the story has meant keeping up with breaking news nearly every week. Prime example being Israel's attack against Iran. When the news broke, nearly 500 news outlets reported on it, with pretty equal coverage across the political spectrum. But if you look closely, the left tended to focus more on the historical significance of the attack, while the right tended to emphasize Israel's right to respond to years of Iranian attacks. This level of insight is only possible with Ground News. It's a website and an app that takes news from all over the world and brings it into one place. And it gives me a clear way to look at how every news story is being covered, which is why I'm thrilled to have them sponsor this episode. For any international conflict, you can go to Ground News to see sources from the UK, India, and even China. You can filter them by recency, reliability, location, and even government affiliation. They even have an interactive feature to explore news from all over the world. It's a tool I personally use all the time, especially as I'm constantly looking for new stories. Ground News has become my first stop for any breaking news story, and I know if you're a fan of Search Party, you want that same level of understanding in your news feeds. So we partnered with Ground News to offer 50% off their Vantage plan, using the code ground.news/searchparty or the QR code. Ground News and I share the same mission, and that's to make the news more understandable and transparent for everyone. So thanks again to Ground News for sponsoring this episode. I'll take you back to the story. Deterrence is a key international relations term, which basically means protecting yourself by convincing your enemy that attacking you would result in their own defeat. Israel has honed this strategy over years of fighting the Arab states, but today it's focused mainly on Iran, and it deters Iran in 3 main ways. First, Israel built one of the best intelligence agencies in the world, Mossad, who placed spies all over the Iranian government. If Iran began preparing to attack, they could find out and warn Israel first. Then Israel could preempt it with a second advantage, superior technology. Thanks to its relationship with the US, Israel has better weapons than Iran in basically every category. Its advanced aircraft can slip past Iran's air defenses to strike first. and its own air defenses can intercept an Iranian response. As a last resort, Israel has a promise from the US to defend it, and Iran knows it can't beat that. Israel has a huge military advantage over Iran, but war hasn't broken out because Iran's developed 3 main ways to deter Israel from attacking it. First, Iran's built a huge number of ballistic missiles that can reach Israel and theoretically overwhelm its air defenses. Second, Iran's developed a nuclear program that it claims is for generating energy, but that it can use to make a bomb if it feels threatened. Third, and most importantly, Iran's been arming and supporting militias that fight Israel on its behalf. Hamas in Gaza and Hezbollah in Lebanon have been battling Israel for years. By sending them weapons and support, Iran's been able to make them more effective and use them as a deterrent. If war were ever to erupt, it could mobilize them, plus militias around the region to attack Israel from all sides. These strategies have deterred Israel and Iran from fighting a direct war, but it hasn't stopped them from fighting one in the shadows.
There's a new computer virus that may be aimed at Iran's nuclear facility.
More likely that Israel did it.
Hezbollah rockets killed 2 Israeli soldiers, and a UN peacekeeper is killed in Lebanon.
Of thousands of top-secret Iranian nuclear weapons files stolen by Mossad agents.
The mastermind of Iran's nuclear weapons program was ambushed with a remote-controlled machine gun.
Sabotage operations and assassinations are ways that Israel reminds Iran that its spies are everywhere. And rocket attacks from Hamas and Hezbollah are how Iran reminds Israel that it's surrounded. While deterrence has kept this rivalry relatively stable, it's always had a major weak point here. Iran's been relying on militias whose priority wasn't to deter Israel, but to destroy it.
Palestinian militants fired thousands of rockets into Israel overnight in a surprise assault by land, sea, and air.
The scale of this, the brutality, is truly unprecedented.
Completely unprecedented attack.
Hamas's attack dramatically weakened Israel's deterrence. The intelligence services had failed to detect it, and the military had failed to respond quickly. But it had also, as Hamas hoped, given Iran an opportunity to finally take on Israel. There was just one problem.
Khamenei didn't want to get into a direct war with Israel because Khamenei is a revolutionary with really radical goals who is also very pragmatic.
Yet the attack forced Iran to choose: fulfill its promise, go to war with Israel and risk its own destruction, or back down, save itself, and lose credibility. Iran chooses the latter.
At the end of the day, Israel does have significant military edge over Iran. This is the main issue, right? The goal of wanting to destroy Israel is an unrealistic goal.
After the attack, as Israel sends its military to crush Hamas, Iranian-backed militias fire some missiles as a show of force, but Iran has them stop short of a full-on attack, revealing it's not willing to use them to defend Palestinians. Israel notices and begins going further. It launches attacks on the militias, then begins launching airstrikes that kill Iranian military officers in Syria. Iran remains on the sidelines until Israel hits its embassy building there, technically Iranian sovereign territory. Iran responds with its other deterrent, firing 300 missiles and drones directly at Israel. But Israel and its allies shoot most of them down.
Iranians launched 320 plus cruise and ballistic missiles and drones. The Israelis find only 1% got through.
Iran was losing its deterrence, while Israel was restoring its own, and gaining the confidence to strike Iran directly. It damages an air defense system in central Iran, then assassinates a top Hamas leader in Tehran at the highly guarded house of the Iranian president. Then in September, it turns to Hezbollah. Mossad infiltrates its network and explodes hundreds of its pagers. Then Israel wipes out much of its leadership, including its longtime leader, Hassan Nasrallah.
Israel has been making the calculation that Iran is not ready to get involved directly in this conflict. The assassination of Hassan Nasrallah is going to put that theory to the test.
Faced with losing its best deterrent, Iran chooses to respond again with missiles, this time by firing 180 of its most advanced kinds. But Israel shoots most of them down again and responds 3 weeks later. The balance of deterrence that had kept these two countries from attacking one another had failed. 2 out of 3 of Iran's deterrence measures aren't effective anymore, and Israel sees a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to decisively weaken it. Now, Israel's attack in October was a big deal because it was the first time it had openly admitted to attacking Iranian territory. But it actually reflected one of the more conservative options it considered. For weeks, the US had urged Israel not to strike Iran's nuclear sites, its last form of deterrence. So instead, Israel only targeted military sites. Some in Israel's government still want to destroy its nuclear facilities, while others talk about going even further.
Ultimately, I believe that we need to topple that regime. It's gonna fall, and it's our job to accelerate that, and then the whole Middle East will look much better.
Iran's promised to retaliate, but doesn't have many options left. Israel can stop most of its attacks, but it can't seem to stop Israel's. The fact is, Israel's backed Iran into a corner. Now the worry is, how far will Israel keep pushing?
You have the weapons, you have the missiles, you have the planes, but the question is, what do you actually want out of it? What are your political objectives? And I think the lack of those is what makes this a concerning and a scary situation.
The key to stopping this conflict from continuing to escalate lies where it all started. For decades, the conflict in Palestine has been the tinderbox for the wider Israel-Iran conflict. It's given Iran a way to stoke tensions by arming militias and threatening Israel. And it keeps Israel at constant risk of attack, to which it will retaliate by striking Iran. As long as this conflict continues, there will be the chance this cycle of violence repeats itself, and one day spirals out of control. So any effort to actually halt the Israel-Iran conflict needs to start with a ceasefire here.
That's the key to everything. If we can get a ceasefire in Gaza, we can get a ceasefire in Lebanon, we can go towards an end to these wars and finally integration of Israel into the region and normalization.
All right, thanks again for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet to Search Party, now's your chance. We cover sports and geopolitics. It's been a lot of geopolitics recently, so we're doing 2 sports stories back to back. Really love these stories. I think you'll like them. So look forward to those, and I'll see you in a couple weeks.